Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the slaying of Arista, the bold demon. Chapter 36 and page 733 in the temple. Text 6. Bhagavan apitad viksha. Okay. 5 to 14. Text 5. Pashavo du dhruvorbita. Rajan Santyajya Gokulam. Krishna Krishneti te sarve. Govindam Sharanam Yahu. Pashavo Dudruvorbita Rajan Santyajya Gokulam Krishna Neti Te Sarve Govindam Sharanam Yahu. Pashavo Dudruvorbita Rajan Santyajya Gokulam Krishna Krishneti Te Sarve Govindam Sharanam Yahu. Pashavo Dudruvorbita Rajan Santyajya Gokulam Krishna Krishneti Te Sarve Krishna Krishneti Te Sarve Govindam Sharanam Yahu. Pashavo Dudruvorbita Rajan Santyajya Gokulam Krishna Krishneti Te Sarve Govindam Sharanam Yahu. Pashavo Dudruvorbita Rajan Santyajya Gokulam Krishna Krishneti Te Sarve Govindam Sharanam Yahu. Pashava, the domestic animals. Dudruvu, ran away. Bitaha, afraid. Rajan, O king. Santyajya, abandoning. Gokulam, the dairy pasture. Krishna, Krishna iti. Krishna, Krishna. Te, they, the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Sarve, all. Govindam, to Lord Govinda. Sharanam, for shelter. Yahu, went. Translation. The domestic animals fled the pasture in fear, O king, and all the inhabitants rushed to Lord Govinda for shelter, crying, Krishna, Krishna. Text 6. Bhagavan apitad viksha gokulam bhaya vidrutam ma baistati girashvasya vrishasuram upavyayat. When the Supreme Lord saw the cowherd community distraught and fleeing in fear, he calmed them by saying, Don't be afraid. Then he called out to the bull demon as follows, Gopalai pashubir manda trasitai kim asatama Mayi shastri dustanam tvad vidhanam duratmanam. You fool, what do you think you are doing? You wicked rascal, frightening the cowherd community and their animals when I am here just to punish corrupt miscreants like you. Ityapot yakchito rishtam tala shabdena kopayan shakyor amse bujabogam prasayavastito hari. Having spoken these words, the infallible Lord Hari slapped his arms with his palms, further angering Arista with the loud sound. The Lord then casually threw his mighty serpentine arm over the shoulder of a friend and stood facing the demon. Purport. Lord Krishna showed his contempt for the ignorant demon. Text 9. Sopyevam kopito rista kuren navanim ulikan udyat pucha brahman megha krudha krishnam upadravat. Thus provoked, Arista pawed the ground with one of his hooves, and then, with the clouds hovering around his upraised tail, furiously charged Krishna. Text 10. Agranyasta vishanagra stabdas griglochana chutam kataksityadravat turnam indramukto shaniryata. Jai. Pointing the tips of his horns straight ahead and glaring menacingly at Lord Krishna, from the corners of his bloodshot eyes, Arista rushed toward him at full speed, like a thunderbolt hurled by Indra. Grihitva shringayostam va astadasha padanisa pratyapovaha bhagavan gaja prati gajam yata. The Supreme Lord Krishna seized Aristasura by the horns and threw him back 18 steps, just as an elephant might do when fighting a rival elephant. So pavidho bhagavata punar utaya satvaram apatat svinnat sarvango nishvasan kroda murchita. Thus repulsed by the Supreme Lord, the bull demon got up and, breathing hard and sweating all over his body, again charged him in a mindless rage. Tamapatan tam sa nigriya shringayo pada samakramya nipatya bhutale nispidayan ashayatardram ambaram kritva vishyanena jagana sopatat. As Arista attacked, Lord Krishna seized him by the horns and knocked him to the ground with his foot. The Lord then thrashed him as if he were a wet cloth, and finally he yanked out one of the demon's horns and struck him with it until he lay prostrate. Text 14. Ashrigvaman mutra sakrit samutsrijan shipams cha padan anavastitik shanaha. Thank you. Jagama krichtram niritir atakshayam pushpai kiranto harim idere suraha. Vomiting blood and profusely excreting stool and urine, kicking his legs and rolling his eyes about, Aristasura thus went painfully to the abode of death. The demigods honored Lord Krishna by scattering flowers upon him. Om Agyana Tamarandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So here we are seeing the demise of the demon Aristasura, and it's said that Krishna is soft as a rose for his devotees and those who surrender unto him, and as we're seeing in this example, he's hard as a thunderbolt for those who want to try and take his position and be envious of him. And I wanted to read just the beginning of this chapter. We have a nice summary here of the whole event. The slaying of Arista, the bull demon. This chapter describes how Krishna killed Aristasura and how Kamsa reacted when he learned from Narada that Krishna and Balaram were the sons of Vasudeva. The demon Arista wanted to kill Krishna and Balaram, and thus he assumed the form of a huge bull with sharp horns. Everyone in Krishna's cowherd village became terrified when Aristasura approached it, but the Lord pacified them. And when the bold demon charged him, he seized him by the horns and threw him about 6 yards. Though weakened, Arista still wanted to attack Krishna. Thus, dripping with sweat, he charged the Lord once again. This time, Krishna grabbed his horns, threw him to the ground, and thrashed him like a pile of wet clothing. The demon vomited blood and gave up his life. Then Krishna and Rama, while being honored by the demigods and cowherd boys, returned to the village. So here we see Krishna, he's hard as a thunderbolt to the demons. And also it's very easy for him to take care of such problems as the demons. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, we read how Indra faced a very large demon who was actually a devotee named Vritrasura. And this demon was gigantic. He was, I think it was his waist blocked out the sun. So you can just imagine how tall he was. And for Indra to cut off his head with his thunderbolt, which Indra's thunderbolt is like the most powerful weapon in this material world, it took years and years and years and years just for him to keep striking him with this thunderbolt and kill him. But here we see the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even the demigods can't compare to his power. Just very easily, we see that Krishna kills Arista Asura just by throwing him as if he were wet clothing. He's thrashing him on the ground like wet clothing, so it's nothing for him. We also see when Krishna and Balaram came into Mathura for the wrestling match that Kamsa invited them to as a plan to kill them, there was a very envious washerman with all sorts of nice clothing for the king. And Krishna asked him to give Krishna and Balaram whatever the best clothing and ornaments that he has. And the washerman became very nasty and very envious and started insulting them in many ways, saying that they were just some cowherd children and actually calling them all sorts of bad names. He said, these clothes are for the king. You guys wouldn't deserve such things. And Krishna, the way he took care of this washerman is he knocked his head off, but not with any weapon or anything like this, but just with his fingertips. So for Krishna, there's no problem with any of these demons. He's the strongest of the strong. Even if a demon has some intelligence, which is ultimately coming from Krishna, everything is coming from Krishna. If a demon has some intelligence to insult Krishna, we see their insults actually don't work because Krishna is fully complete. Everything is coming from him. Even if you try to insult him, it can be used just to glorify him. Like the example yesterday, what was it? Of Keshava Kashmiri. Actually, I don't remember exactly with him, but Mother Saraswati, she uses the different insults and different things that certain demons and other persons will say towards Krishna. She'll actually use these terms and phrases that look like they would be degrading in a way to actually glorify the Lord. Because Krishna is complete. Everything is coming from him. So even if somebody said, oh, Krishna, he's stole all these other men's wives, what a terrible person. But actually, nobody else can do that and get away with it also. But Krishna, he performs all these pastimes so blissfully that no other person can do. So even if somebody insults him, actually, it glorifies the Lord. I heard a lecture recently where there were so many different examples of these different insults to the Lord, but they all actually, you can turn them around and they all glorify him. So in the material world, the conditioned souls were all trying to lord it over material nature, but a purified devotee of the Lord is just trying to do everything for the satisfaction of Krishna. It's actually really amazing. We see like Krishna's associates, the cowherd boys and all of his friends in Vrindavan, they're everything that they're doing is simply for Krishna's pleasure. Even something that seems like it might be for them, there's actually no personal gain that they're trying to get out of it. Like in the material world, the so-called love here is actually just lust. There's no love in the material world. Anything, any of these kind of relationships and things, there's actually just some personal motive. So what can I get from this person? How can I enjoy better in this way? But then in the spiritual world, or with Krishna's devotees, everything is simply for the pleasure of Krishna. So we see, there's an example in the 10th canto where the cowherd boys, they're asking Krishna because he kills so many demons. They're saying, Krishna, please help us defeat this great big appetite that is causing us so much trouble, this demon of hunger. And it might seem like, oh, they're asking him for something for themselves to satisfy their stomachs. But actually, it's explained in the purport that the cowherd boys were only asking Krishna this in order to instigate one of these great pastimes that they knew would bring Krishna pleasure. His pastime of killing Dhenukasura, who was guarding a whole forest full of these big, delicious fruit trees. No one could go there because Dhenukasura and these other donkey demons are causing so much trouble. So the cowherd boys instigated Krishna in this way, saying, oh, we're so hungry. Please help us slay this demon of hunger. And so Krishna and Balaram go there, very easily whirl these demons around and throw them into the trees, and that knocks all the trees over, all the fruits fall to the ground. And like this, they enjoy with their cowherd boyfriends. And every day, actually, Krishna was spending time with his associates killing these demons. So it's just a normal activity. If we see someone, maybe a really strong personality in this world, like Mike Tyson or some big fighter, they have one fight on television and afterwards they're exhausted and they take some big vacation. But Krishna, he's fighting demon after demon just before lunchtime, and then he takes lunch and fights some more demons, and it's just what he does for fun. And he doesn't even sweat. We didn't even see a description in this fight with Aristasura of Krishna making any exhausted noise or sweating. He just calls to the cowherd community, tells them not to be afraid, very amazingly insults Aristasura. He says, you wicked rascal, frightening the cowherd community and their animals when I am here just to punish corrupt miscreants like you. And then easily dealing with Aristasura. So sometimes Prabhupada explains in his purports that if we are trying to preach the message of the Lord and serve Lord Krishna, since we're in the material world where everyone is trying to do the opposite, we come here to try to be the Lord of all we survey, this material world. So naturally, we're going to have a lot of opposition in our preaching efforts. So sometimes devotees run into such problems when they're out on book distribution or any other preaching engagement, but we see that Krishna always protects his devotees. They're always under his protection. Like there's the example of Lord Chaitanya and Haridas Thakur, actually, where Haridas Thakur was getting beaten in 21 marketplaces, but he was still just chanting the Lord's name. And he said he also didn't feel the whips hitting his back, but then Lord Chaitanya revealed that he was actually protecting him from, he was actually taking on the beating of these whips so that his devotee wouldn't have to take it. There's some examples that come to mind of people on book distribution who come into such problems and then they're perfectly fine. Like there's this devotee, Ananda Kirtan, and he's a very wonderful book distributor from the LA temple in California, New Dwarka. And he was explaining that he approached some very big, muscular person with a book, and for whatever reason, the person really was not so interested. And Ananda Kirtan was trying to get him to take the book, and the guy just got angry all of a sudden, and he punched Ananda Kirtan in the face. But it didn't bother him. He said he didn't even feel it in the moment. Actually, he felt bad that he couldn't give him the book. So he got hit in the face, and the way it played out was kind of like this. He was asking him to take the book, and Ananda Kirtan just said, "I'm sorry." He didn't, it's not that he like got knocked out or got hurt or got upset or anything. He just, "I'm sorry." And like that. So he said he felt it was Krishna's mercy. He didn't even get hurt. But we also see when devotees do something very big for Krishna and very risky, Krishna protects them and also rewards them. He explains in the Bhagavad Gita that as devotees surrender, as someone surrenders unto him, he will reward them accordingly. And that brings to mind this incredible feat. And just one other thing is that he also actually he lets the devotees be glorified. Like Krishna could have easily dealt with the whole battle of Kurukshetra like that. He could have snapped his finger and it's over. But actually he lets his great devotee Arjuna take the credit. He speaks to him the Bhagavad Gita, and now they're both glorified. And Arjuna actually follows Krishna's instructions, and now for time immemorial they're being glorified. So Krishna it's not that he needs our service. It's not, okay, wow, I've washed so many pots, I've given out so many books. What would the temple do without me? What would Krishna do without me? I'll go do something else. But actually, Krishna is giving us it's his kindness and his care that he's giving us the service. He's giving us the opportunity to serve him. And we see in Srila Prabhupada's time, when he was walking around on this planet, he gave so many amazing services to he just gave so many services to these devotees, and they would do them. And if they couldn't do them after some time and would go away, then someone else would take up the service and they'd become glorious. So it's not that Krishna needs us to do the service. If we don't do it, he just sends somebody else. He's controlling everything. He has everything at his disposal. So if we don't do it, he'll send somebody else. And if they take it up, they become glorious. So in the Soviet Union, back before anything was really allowed to go on over in like Germany and Russia, there was like the Soviet Union, the Iron Curtain, all of these big communist regimes going on. And Harikesh Maharaj got inspired to bring books, Srila Prabhupada's books, into the Soviet Union. So they made a plan that they'd take two vans. One van would be going in the transit, so just going into the country and out of the country, and that way it doesn't get investigated very much. And the other van his van would be going for to stay in the country, and that's the one that would get searched. So the transit van, they filled up with they filled it to the brim with big boxes of Prabhupada's books, bigger than the ones that we move around today. And then the other van, they left empty, the one that would be staying in the country, so that they could switch them. Because the idea is the one that's going in transit won't be checked, the one that has all the books. So Harikesh Maharaj explained that both of the vans got to the checkpoint at the same time, and the one got cleared to go for transit, to just go through the country, the one that has all the books. And then the officers looked in Harikesh Maharaj's van, and he thought, oh no, I'm such an idiot, because he's signed up to stay in the country, but there's absolutely nothing in his van. He didn't even put one bag in it. So they became very suspicious that there's nothing there. But anyways, they let him through, and at the first rest stop, both of the Harikesh Maharaj and the other devotees, they stop and get ready to switch all of the boxes of books into the other van. And then the officers at that time, I forget what they're called, the KGB officers in the Soviet Union, they came to the same rest stop. So all the devotees were very scared, and Harikesh Maharaj told them, okay, let's just go to a picnic bench, will eat some apples, act natural. So they're eating these apples and they're seeing the officers looking through the vans. And they're also biting off like their nails. They're so anxious. And the officers kind of searched through it for some time, but then they left. So right when they left, Harikesh Maharaj says, okay, let's go now, let's switch them. So they take all these huge boxes as quick as they can. They're just throwing them like it's nothing into the other van, into his van. And then the one van goes out on transit and leaves the country. And Harikesh Maharaj starts driving to the devotee who he's going to drop off all of Prabhupada's books with. And as he's driving, he sees the same officer who had originally came by and looked in both of them when they were at the rest stop. And he starts flagging down Harikesh Maharaj and tells him to pull over. So he realized if he pulls over, he's finished. And if he keeps going and gets in trouble, he's also finished. So he decided he would just depend on Krishna, try to get these books into the country and keep going. So he put the pedal to the floor in the van and started just driving on past the officer. And right when he got over this little hill where the officer couldn't see him, he just put the pedal to the floor and he's just screaming down the Autobahn at like 120 miles an hour. He said it was a very clear day, very sunny, but no clouds. But just at this moment when he starts driving as fast as he can to get out of there and bring the books into the country, the whole sky just opened up. And he said it was like pillars of rain just started coming down. And from the rain hitting this hot street that was it was sunny all day, all this fog came up. So the officers behind him wouldn't be able to see him. And he's going real fast, just took the first turn off of the highway and got to the devotee's house who he was supposed to bring the books to. So it was like the middle of the night, and he starts throwing these rocks up at the devotee's window. And the devotee opens it. He's like, "What's going on? I thought you were supposed to be here earlier." And Harikesh Maharaj just said, "It doesn't matter. I've got the books. Come on." So he's lifting them, and he was in such anxiety that whole day that he's lifting them like they're nothing because he's just full of adrenaline. And anyway, so he's taking the boxes and he's just throwing them up to the window. And this devotee, seeing how quickly he's lifting them, he thought these boxes probably weigh nothing. So he's standing there to catch them. Harikesh throws them up to the window, and they just hit the devotee in the chest because they're so heavy, and he flies back into the room. And Harikesh Maharaj said he just heard a from the inside of the room. It's like this, he's just throwing all the boxes up quickly. And the devotee asked him, "How can I contact you? What do I do with all of these books?" He didn't even have enough room to like sleep in his room anymore. It filled it all up. He said, "Don't contact me, don't know me, I'm going, goodbye." And he drives out of there. And he got to the camping spot he was supposed to get to and just fell asleep. It's not even that he fell asleep, he just totally knocked out. And he heard about 2 hours after falling asleep, some banging on the door and another knock and so Harikesh, he screamed. And but then they asked, "Is so-and-so inside?" And he said, "Yes." And they said, "We have a phone call for you." So he opens the door and he takes the phone after all of this craziness. And he thought this person was just going to throw him in jail. But he opens the door and he takes it. And it was one of the devotees who was with Srila Prabhupada. And he said, "Srila Prabhupada would like for you to come and be his personal secretary now." And Harikesh Maharaj just said, "You don't know how good that sounds." And he said the rest of the time leaving the country was smooth sailing. And then he went to go personally serve Srila Prabhupada. So like this, he had realized how Krishna rewards his devotees accordingly if they just try to surrender unto him a little bit. So he went through all of this anxiety, but in the end he got the best thing you could possibly get in this world, which is the association and service of our founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. And of course, I don't have any experiences like that of book distribution that have been so much filled with so much anxiety. But we do see every so often, or actually just all of the time, how Krishna is making the arrangements to let us distribute so many books, because it's never our own doing or our own effort. Like I'll even notice sometimes on book distribution, if I get too fruitive or something, so then people will stop taking the books immediately. But if I'm just chanting and thinking, okay, I'm just trying to do my service, I'm not the doer, I'm not the one who's going to get the result, then things go pretty nicely, especially if I'm praying throughout the service. That's actually the only time it works. If I'm not praying to my guru and to Prabhupada and to Sri Gaur Nitai, nothing really happens. Whenever I stop praying during the service, then usually it just starts to fall apart. People start coming up, getting really interested, maybe getting a whole stack of books in their hand and going, wow, this is really amazing. Thank you. And walking away without giving a donation. Take like 8 big books. All these things start happening until I get frustrated. And then when I start praying again, praying that I can somehow be of some use to Srila Prabhupada's mission and to Lord Chaitanya, even though I have no qualification, then things start happening nicely. Like when we were in Houston, I was actually getting really sick, so I didn't think I could go and do this. We go to these big tattoo conventions and we get a booth and distribute the books there. So I didn't think I could actually go. But my temple president said, well, why don't you just try it a little bit, and hopefully Krishna's mercy will make it all work out. So I just took his instructions, since he's my direct authority. And from doing that, I was totally tired and sick, and I didn't think I could even speak to anybody at the convention. Somehow or other, more books went out and more donations came in than ever before. I mean, I really felt totally spaced out. I had no ability to distribute that day, but people were so happy to come and take so many books. And I remember at one point, there was just a small window to take some prasadam. So I went to take some prasadam, and I started praying. I was looking at the picture of Lord Chaitanya on the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. I was praying, Lord Chaitanya, please engage me in your service. And Lord Nityananda, please engage me in your service. But the second after that, I didn't have any time to take prasadam anymore. All these 3 people came up to the table and they all wanted books, so I had to start talking to them. So put it down and got back into it. And then for the next maybe hour or half hour, people just kept coming up, so there was no time to sit down and take the prasadam. So I guess I learned from that, if we're praying to be engaged in Krishna service, we should actually want to be and be ready to be engaged in service. So like this, by the mercy of the Guru and the mercy of Krishna, then we actually get the great opportunity to be engaged in service. It's not that, oh, I'm some hot shot, I'm so qualified, I'll go do it. But actually, we're getting this great opportunity, the most valuable thing we can have in our lives, this service. We're being given that by our authorities, by the Guru, by Lord Chaitanya. So like this, we should try to follow the instructions of our authorities and our Guru as strictly as possible. That's all we really have. I remember when I first came to the Krishna consciousness movement, I was just checking it out. I didn't know that this was going to be a lifelong thing, or that this is real life. The devotee who reeled me in, his name is Krishna Bhagavan, and he said he would just kind of call me once a month when I was at college. I met a devotee on book distribution who forced me to take a book. I didn't want it, but I thought it was the Chant and Be Happy book. I thought, I've heard of this chanting. Okay, maybe it makes some people happy, but I meditate on my own, I'm good. And he was saying, no, just take it. And I didn't say that to him, but he pretty much made me take the book. And I asked him if I could help in any way. And he gave my phone number to this devotee, Krishna Bhagavan, who would engage me in some small little services. And he would call once a month and just listen to my nonsense, and then invite me at the end of college to the temple. So when he invited me, just like we see throughout the Bhagavatam, the devotees of the Lord, they're not always
being completely straightforward to engage someone in service. Like we even see with Haridas Thakur, he was lying to the prostitute who's coming to him and asking to enjoy with him. He said, okay, after I have these rounds that I have a vow to do, and after I finish them, then whatever you like, we can do. But so he wasn't telling the truth. He wasn't actually planning to enjoy with this person, but he knows that by chanting the holy name and by her hearing, she'll become purified. So he's lying actually, but it's for the service of the Lord. It's to bring people closer to Lord Chaitanya, to bring people closer to Krishna, and it actually it's bona fide. We see Narada Muni often plays different transcendental tricks on people to make them become devotees. So like this Krishna Bhagavan, he was telling me, oh yeah, we're monks, we do some meditation, so just come for a retreat, just check it out for just a month and do some meditation, have a good time. And then I got there and all of a sudden Krishna is God, I'm not the body, everything I need to know is in the Bhagavad Gita, I'm a rascal. All of these dots are being connected. And so I realized this is amazing. After a few days, I met His Holiness Dhanavir Goswami and realized this is the real deal. Sorry, I forgot where this was going, but the devotees are very merciful to engage us in service. It's not that we're going to muscle our way into getting some kind of service, or it's actually the most valuable thing in our lives, this service. Without it, we can see before devotional service, we're engaged in so many nonsense activities, always having different ups and downs. It's described, it's the ocean of material existence. So at one point we're under the water, totally drowning and miserable. And then those little moments when a wave comes and we get back up for a moment and we can breathe, we think, this is nice, I'm happy. Then another wave comes and we're back down under. So there's no happiness in the material world. But when we're given service by the devotees, when we come to devotional service, not by our own qualification, but just by the mercy of the devotees, that's actually that is our only qualification. We come to devotional service by their mercy, and then we can actually be happy. We can eternally be going, not having these ups and downs, but going up and up towards the spiritual world and towards Krishna. So I'm sorry I forgot where the whole monologue about coming to Krishna consciousness is going, but are there any comments or questions on killing Aristasura or engaging in devotional service?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Nice class, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Very inspiring, your books distribution stories. I have a question regarding how can we strengthen our faith in when hardships comes in our life, like other Vrajavasis, they call out for Krishna immediately without any second thought. As a conditioned souls, is it very difficult to call out for Krishna, even though we are chanting, reading, everything is happening? Can you just speak a little bit on this or share your realization?
One thing that comes to mind is how I've heard Radhanath Swami describing in a lecture on Krishna and the Shaimantaka jewel, retrieving the Shaimantaka jewel. He was describing how when these hardships come, such as in that past time, well, actually I don't want to give the wrong example, but when these hardships come, we actually have a great opportunity to surrender to Krishna. So in material life, when hardships come, it's just horrible, because the goal is sense gratification. So when something difficult happens, everything's ruined. There's no happiness. But actually, when challenges come in devotional service, it can be very enlivening, because that's actually giving us a great opportunity to surrender more to the Lord. So it's an opportunity to call out for Krishna's mercy. And I asked my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Dhanavir Goswami, about what we do about these ups and downs in devotional service.
And he said, when there's, and I've also heard Prabhupada say the same thing in his lectures, when we're very happy, when there's the ups, it's not that we become like ecstatic or euphoric, because we read in the Bhagavad Gita, a sage of steady mind, he's steady. Whether there's happiness or distress, he's not bothered by either of them. So when we're happy, if we keep engaging in devotional service, then that's perfect. We passed. But if we're happy and think, okay, everything's so nice, now I can just chill out and enjoy, then that's not so good. And in the same way, when we become depressed in our service, which ultimately devotional service isn't depressing, it's because of our own anarthas and material things that get in the way that we have to work through by Prabhupada's mercy and Krishna's mercy. When these lows come, if we keep engaging in devotional service, then similarly we passed. So it's not that, okay, it's very cold today, so I'm not going to do my service, or I'm very not in a good mood today, so I'm not going to do my service. Whatever's going on, if we keep engaging in our service, then that's perfect. We can keep advancing in Krishna consciousness that way. And also, in that way, we'll have the protection of Krishna. So that's nice to know. We just keep engaging in our service. But also another devotee made it even nicer when I was asking him the same question like last week. His name is Adi Purusha Prabhu. And he was telling me that we really don't have much qualification or much that we can do besides beg for the mercy of Krishna, beg for the mercy of our guru. He's said he's asking his guru to pull him. He said it's literally that he has to be pulled. It's not that he's even moving forward at all. He was saying out of his humility, he's saying he has to beg to be pulled along in devotional service. So like that, I think just one other thing that comes to mind that I heard in a lecture recently is the main thing is the association of devotees. Because if we can keep that, just always staying in the association of devotees, then everything is okay. We have some kind of problem or something, and we go reveal our mind to a devotee, and in just a couple minutes, all of a sudden everything is solved. Or we're sick or exhausted or whatever, and we take prasadam with the devotees, and all of a sudden the illness is gone, everything's fixed, and we're ready to go. So like this, and we see devotees sincerely taking shelter of Krishna, and then we're inspired to take shelter of Krishna in his holy name. So like this, we just stay in the association of devotees. And if we associate with non-devotees, then that's just going to bring us more down. We're going to be less enthused. But if we associate more with devotees, we become more and more enthused very, very quickly. Hare Krishna. Do we have time, or is it? Okay.
Hare Krishna. Whoa, that's very loud.
Hare Krishna.
My voice is loud anyway. My appreciation of your last point answering Prabhu's question was you brought up the story of the Shamataka Jewel. And you also brought up Radhanath Maharaj, and so that reminded me of the point His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj made in regards to pretty much owning anything, whether it's a Shamataka jewel or any of our possessions, because when Satyajit thought he owned the Shamataka jewel, when it was taken away from him, he started to falsely accuse Krishna. He was so miserable. But Radhanath Maharaj made a very profound point. This is in a video where he gave sannyas initiation to Amara Bhakta Prabhu, who's Maharaj now. And you can check it out in that video. So Radhanath Maharaj makes a point that Srila Prabhupada also makes in his purports, the Gita, chapter 5, verse 2. So Radhanath Maharaj says, Srila Prabhupada was once asked by a devotee for permission to renounce everything. Srila Prabhupada's response was, Krishna owns everything. So what do you have to renounce? The only thing you have to renounce is the misconception that you have something to renounce. And so we see when things are taken away from us, if we become disturbed, that's a tendency that we had in the first place. So I really appreciate that point. And the last point in regards to this is that there's a nice quote that says, you never invite a thief into your house. So why would you allow thoughts that steal your joy to make themselves at home in your mind? So this distinction between material wealth and spiritual wealth. We see Hiranyakashipu. You could say, even though his name means one who loves gold. So we see in the material world, even if we have a pot of gold on the outside, but if we don't have a heart of gold on the inside, then at minimum, we can't keep our peace of mind. And at maximum, we can't keep our fame, our fortune, our family, our friends, and our freedom. And so Hiranyakashipu lost it all. So what are some steps that we could take to be more enthusiastic to acquire this spiritual wealth, which is hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, because there's so many temptations in this world. How can one develop the faith in this spiritual wealth? Because you can't see spiritual wealth. I can't see your humility. You can't see my humility. But without humility, we're completely miserable. Even if we have billions of dollars, we lose it all. So there are some steps we could develop faith in this subtle wealth, this, spiritual wealth.
I think you explained it better than I could, actually. That the example that Srila Prabhupada gives with that renunciation point is how if someone walks into the Bank of America and he says, I renounce all of the money in the Bank of America, they would just look at him like he's crazy because he never owned it to begin with. So that's like our position in the material world. All of this, everything we can imagine is owned by Krishna. So we don't have anything to renounce. The perfection of renunciation is engaging anything and everything in Krishna's service, anything that we're capable of engaging. Of course, there's some things that it's not going to work. We can't accept everything from everybody, especially when we're like distributing books at like music festivals and things. But most of the time, almost anything, whatever we're able to, we engage it in Krishna service, and then that's renunciation. We're putting it back where it belongs. And then you were saying, how do we develop faith in this this spiritual wealth? Well, it's actually like a nectar of instruction, and all of there's a lot of really simple details actually about how we develop faith and how we progress in devotional service, like all over Prabhupada's books. One of the things I try to read every time before I start distributing books is his prayers that Prabhupada wrote on the Jaladuta, which are in towards the like 70% of the way through the Science of Self-Realization book. And that's the most popular book people take. So you can just hold it in your hand and walk around, and you need some inspiration, you can read that, and then you can just give it to somebody. And in those prayers, he quotes from the Bhagavatam, and it just explains the whole process of devotional service in this one quote, where it's saying by regular attendance in classes on the Srimad Bhagavatam, all inauspicious things in the heart are destroyed almost to nil. So that's so powerful. Just by regularly attending classes on the Bhagavatam, all these things that get in the way of our devotional service and our faith, all the unwanted things for advancement in Krishna consciousness, are destroyed almost to zero. And one of the main ways of building faith, like it said there, is by hearing. So the more we hear about Krishna, about Krishna's devotees, about the process of devotional service, the philosophy, then the more faith we'll have in that spiritual wealth, like you're saying. Sometimes if we're not hearing so much, we can become really lax in our service. Even our chanting might become more distracted, not so focused. It's just not as good. But then you see, we take the time to hear nicely from Prabhupada or his representatives. Cheering also means reading, so we really set the time to get absorbed in our reading or whatever it is, hearing when we're doing some service on the headphones. And then the next day, all of a sudden, we're like really into it with the japa, really taking shelter of Krishna's holy names. So hearing, we develop our faith by hearing. That's one of the ways, of course, associating with devotees. Are there any other comments or questions or corrections?
Yeah, I was. Thank you very much for your class. I was thinking that means when Krishna was returning from Govardhan, so acharyas they explain that when he was going, he was preparing for Rasa dance. Then this demon, Aristasura, started attacking Braja. So I was wondering which is where is the location of Rasa dance? Is it near to the Govardhan or near to Vrindavan? I confused. So wow,
I'm not sure. I understand your question.
where is the location of Rasa dance? In Vrindavan. Yeah, Rasa dance in Vrindavan.
In the Vrindavan, behind there's a place called Seva Kunj, where where the devotees, like everything, like we have to visit there. There all the trees and everything will be all the surrounded by the trees. After 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock, nobody is allowed there, and they just keep all the paraphernalia for the deities, like betel nuts, pan, everything, and they will lock it up and go away. That's near, I think, in the Lohi Bazaar, yeah. There we have it. That's a bazaar.
But I said here, it says actually here, when Krishna was coming from Govardhan. It will be one of the places.
Yeah, it's not like only one place. Maybe there will be many places also. Yeah, and also it is said in
In Gokul,
yeah,
there is also place for Rasa dance.
right.
When I was visiting, somebody said this is the place for Rasa dance.
Yeah, the Krishna is all powerful. He can do anywhere, any pastime. That's the one.
Hare Krishna. Rasa dance, very high topic. Hare Krishna. We are conditioned souls. It's totally spiritual, transcendental. But here also in this pastimes it says in Radha Kund. When the bull is killed, gopis are saying that you killed a bull, so you have to do some prashit. Prashit means atonement. So he brings Radha Kund, I think, yeah. And the gopis, they meditate on Manasa Ganga. You say you have been contaminated by killing a bull, so they bring Manasa Ganga and all the holy rivers, and they make a kund. So that place also is Krishna performed Ras Leela, it says like that. So another thing he told of Seva Kunj. Seva Kunj is a place, it said that you cannot go that place particularly, as far as my limited this. And I was to say this, especially in this pastimes, Krishna is holding the horns. And Srila Prabhupada said the animals are controlled by the nose. In childhood also we used to catch the horns of the animals like bulls, and it does back like that. It's like the main part, like. And the demonic, like Srila Prabhupada said, when you chant loudly, all the demons run away. Like you do book distribution, you do Sankirtan, and you follow the principles of Krishna consciousness, then you have become more enthusiastic to chant the name like that. So the holy name is some weapon in this age, especially recommended. Following the being careful, avoiding the 10 offenses, and following the regulations, so that it becomes more effective. We can be fixed in Krishna consciousness. And once I heard in a class, it's a nice, one devotee was explaining that they were in a plane and all of a sudden the plane started to shake something and everybody was fearing. They were shouting, oh, to save their life. What will happen? Like they were in a fearful stage. So there was a devotee who was chanting loudly, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram, 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 Hare Hare. So they told, why, what are you doing? We are all in this situation like that. Why are you shouting? He said, I know that I'm so sinful. Krishna won't come to protect me, so I'm chanting loudly. Like that. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for
Hare Krishna.
Are there any last comments or questions?
You were highlighting the great reliance you have on praying to perform your service. And you spoke about praying to Lord Chaitanya to permit you to perform the particular service that you were performing of distributing books, and so having persons have that opportunity to be exposed to transcendental literature. So I just had a question, because you were talking on a very personal level. Do you have particular prayers that you've utilized from the Shastras that resonate with you? So I'm asking you just a personal question, since you emphasize that reliance on prayer.
I'll usually pray in a way that most of the time I'm repeating prayers other devotees have told me, especially if they're short and simple, because my mind is usually going in so many directions when I'm trying to do like book distribution or something. So but you're asking prayers from the Shastras. Other than Srila Prabhupada's Jaladuta prayers, I think that would be the only one that I read often and then just try to recite, because I feel like everything is in there, and it's also so inspiring getting to remember Srila Prabhupada in this way every time reading it. And he describes the whole scenario that we're in when we're trying to preach, because he's saying clearly you have some business here, Krishna, otherwise why would you bring me to such a terrible place? And he's explaining that all of the people here are absorbed in the modes of passion and ignorance, and they're thinking themselves happy. So there's no way that they will understand this message of Lord Vasudeva unless you make them fit to hear it and make my words pure for them to understand. And so in this way, he's praying and explaining how he's totally powerless to do so on his own. And it all culminates towards the end when he's saying, if you've brought me here to dance, then Lord, make me dance, please make me dance as you will or as you like, or something like this. So he's showing this mood of total dependence on the Lord, and total, he's explaining that he's totally unqualified. So we see that's the mood of a devotee, even someone who's so extremely qualified as Srila Prabhupada, qualified enough to change the entire planet, let alone maybe that the whole universe. I don't know what's going on everywhere else, but we hear that the demigods are lining up to take birth in this movement. So the whole mood and the philosophy and everything is just there in Srila Prabhupada's prayers when he comes to America. Thank you. Are there any last comments or questions? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.